Our first item is our Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Vice Chair, could you read our mission statement?
Marshall Public Schools develops the potential of each learner for success in a changing world.
Thank you. We need approval of the agenda. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Very good. Any additions? Hearing none, please vote. Yeah, I did. Yeah. Karen, did you vote?
I voted.
Voted? Everyone?
I'm black.
Oh, there it goes. It's slow. Motion is approved. Public forum. Now it's time for the public to approach the board. Does anybody in the public have anything they'd like to approach us with? Okay. Move on to our presentation, Truth in Taxation presentation by Mr. Lamprecht. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Glad you're here this evening. This is the public hearing for taxes for payable in 2017. And we will go through this as efficiently as possible. If you have any questions along the way, by all means shout them out. Be happy to try and answer them. And I would suggest that on your computers, if you want to bring the presentation up and view it that way, you can certainly do that as well. This is something that we are required to do. We can't do it any sooner than November 25th, and we have to have it done by December 28th. And state law does in fact require that we do provide information on our results from 15-16 and what our budget is for 16-17. And as you can see, we need to show the percentage change from the prior year as far as our tax increase or decrease and the reasons why it increases or decreases, and allow time for the general public to in fact ask any questions that they may have. So here's the agenda. We're going to give you a background on school funding, property tax levies and budgets, information on our budget, information on the proposed tax levy for taxes payable in 17, and then again allow time for comments and questions. Public education is strong in Minnesota. This is information in regards to the ACT tests and how Minnesota compares. It compares very favorable, composite score of 21.1. That's the highest in the nation of the 18 states that have 100% participation who took the test in 2016. The national composite score is 20.8, and that's based on 64%. And there's a huge difference, obviously, of everyone taking it as compared to 64%. Marshall's composite score is 21.0, so it's right in the realm of what the state of Minnesota turned out to have. And this is in the Minnesota State Constitution. It's the duty of the legislature to establish a general and uniform system of public schools and to support those public schools. And a result from that, the school district funding is highly regulated by the state. There's not a lot that a local school district can do. The state sets the formulas to determine most of the revenue. They set the tax policy for local school districts. They set the maximum authorized property tax levy. And the only way that that can be changed is if there's approval with a bond referendum or an operating referendum. And one thing that they have authorized is the School board to levy up to $724 per pupil unit, $300 by board referendum, and then the $424 in local optional revenue, which we've talked about in the past. So we're right at the $724. The state general education and revenue formula has not kept pace with inflation. For 16 and 17, the legislature approved an increase of 2% on the general formula, $117 in 16, $119 for this current year of 2016-2017. And in regards to keeping up with inflation or not keeping up with inflation, we're down by $550. In this next slide really kind of shows that difference, that $550 difference, taking into consideration inflation over this period of time. So that's something that, again, we hope that the legislature will work on with the new legislative session that starts in January of 2017. Any questions in regards to that? Okay. Special education, funding of special education causes a drain on funding from the regular classroom programs. It's been a fact of life forever and ever. We've talked about over the years cross-subsidy, and that cross-subsidy now is in essence $679 per pupil unit. That's across the state of Minnesota. The legislature, the 2015 legislature did in fact provide increased special education funding for the 16-17 biennium, and so hopefully that cross-subsidy number of $679 will be reduced to $507 based on the new funding. And really, I think the title of this slide probably is inaccurate. Growing dependence. There really is dependence on referendum revenue. In '93, 65% of the school districts had referendums, averaging $332 per pupil unit. In 16-17, almost 100% of districts have referendum revenue, plus, of course, the local optional revenue that we get, averaging $1,262. Keep in mind that we receive $724. And so that $1,262 is 20.8% of the general education formula. So, yes, there is a significant dependence on operating referendums. And out of that $1,262, the makeup is $853 in board approved or voter approved, and the $409 is the local optional revenue. So some districts don't go the whole route of the 424, but very few. Again, any questions? Just keep in mind this is 2016 payable 2017 levy, and that's for the 17-18 school year, which is fiscal year 2018. If the tax levy amount changes, it doesn't necessarily determine that there's going to be a change in the budget. There's a lot of different formulas and things that are involved. Some increases in the tax levies are going to be revenue neutral because it's offset by state aid. And the state and the legislature do play around with that over the years, each of the sessions, as far as the aid levy makeup on a number of the aids that we do, or the revenue that we do receive. The expenditure budget is limited by the state set revenue, and again, the voter approved levies, and what the fund balance might be, not just by tax levies. And as I said before, an increase in school taxes doesn't necessarily mean or correlate that there will be an equal increase in the budget amount. And our fiscal year runs differently. The cycle runs differently than the city and county. The city and county is on a calendar year basis as far as their budget goes and their levy process. For the school district, as you're well aware, our our fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. So again, the revenue generated by this tax levy will be used for the 17-18 fiscal year, and that will all come about with the budget that's adopted in June of 2017. So we only have to show current year budget information and prior year actual information, because we really have not started on our budget for the next year. For cities and counties, they're talking about their 2017 budget. Our 6 different funds that we have: general, food service, community services, capital outlay, debt service, and transportation, are all affected by this tax levy process eventually. This slide notes a comparison of our 15-16 actual results for revenue in each of our different funds with our budgeted 16-17 and what that percent of change is. So as an example, we're looking at an increase in revenue in the general fund of 2.36% for 16-17 as compared with 15-16. Total, the change looks like about 2.3%. And this is with our using our revised budget that you approved in October. Those are the numbers that are being used. And then, of course, these are actual audited numbers from the audit that was just completed for the 15-16 year. Any questions on revenue comparison? And it's the same scenario, but this is, of course, talking about expenditures. The 15-16 numbers, actual numbers, with our 16-17 budgeted numbers. As an example, in the general fund, we're looking at an almost 6% increase. That reflects a lot of the changes that we made, the additions in staffing and some of our technology ongoing purchases. So that's why there's what one could consider anyway a fairly significant change in the general fund. The rest of them are pretty much hold their own, and all total we're looking at a little bit more than a 5.5% increase in expenditures 15-16 as compared to 16-17. And this is taking the whole revenue picture. This pie chart shows that a great majority, 73% of the funding that we receive is dedicated to the general fund. And then debt redemption is at 8%, and then the rest you can see. So again, the general fund, which is our main operating fund, really does in fact receive a great majority of the revenue on an annualized basis. This is a report that we need to publish, and we have published in the local newspaper, in the Independent. And I would just draw your attention to this number here, down below. That is what we spent on operating costs per average daily membership pupil, a little over $12,000 in 2016. And that's increased steadily over the years. So again, that's a significant investment if you think about it as to what we spend on an average for each of our students. This is another way of looking at our revenues. And again, this was for 15-16. We receive 81% of our revenues from the state through our state sources. The next in line is local property tax levies, which is at 10%, and then other local and county revenues at 6%, and federal, which is at 3%. But we do receive a number of mandates, especially in the area of special education that comes from the federal government, but we don't receive the commensurate funding to help pay for some of the mandates that we have to comply with. In our general fund, here's how the expenditures are broken out. The three really top categories are, it should be, regular instruction is at 47%, exceptional instruction at 19%, and then for our site buildings and equipment at 11%. And then you can see all the other numbers as they correlate with the guide there. And by object of how the dollars are spent, this pie chart shows that if you combine salaries and wages and employee benefits, and again this is in the general fund, we're at 80% of our expenditures in the general fund are for salaries and benefits. We are a service organization, and that really shows it in good detail. Purchase services, that is at 11%. That can be utilities and a variety of other things. And again, supplies and materials. As Mr. Swope told me a long, long time ago, your budget isn't made up of paper clips very much, and it's still true. And this is just, again, maybe a little bit of an agenda in regards to moving into our proposed tax levy for 2016. And every property owner pays property taxes for the different taxing jurisdictions, city, county, school district, township. And each jurisdiction holds one of these truth and taxation hearings to talk about the tax levy that they're setting. And many of them are often based on state limits, certainly with the school district. And then the county sends out the bills, collects the taxes, and then eventually the money comes back to the different taxing jurisdictions. You all should have received a truth and taxation notice if you are a property owner here in Marshall. That came from the county. This happens to be mine, and what it shows actually kind of confirms what the increase is in regards to taxes for school district purposes. So I think that's somewhat of a comforting thing, knowing that what we're talking about really is reflected in the proposed truth and tax notice. School districts they levy taxes in a lot of different areas, different categories, over 30. The levy limits, of course, are set by state law or based on voter approval. And then the Minnesota Department of Education does the calculations, and I've showed this document before, I'll just show it again. 38 pages of formulas and calculations that come from the Department of Education. They do a great job. This year is kind of unusual that last week and the week before, we got adjustments at a late stage of the game from the Minnesota Department of Education. It was not very large adjustments, but kind of surprised to see at this late date having some changes that occurred. And that reflects on the complexity of this whole 38-page list of formulas.
Bruce, of those 30 categories, how many do we levy in?
Many, most of them, yeah. And this is just the 7 steps in regards to the property tax process. Focus on step number 6. The school board adopts a proposed levy in September based on the limits that are set in the previous 5 step, or in step 5. And the public hearing, which we're having tonight, After that, sometimes school districts will adopt the levy right after the public hearing, but we choose to do that at our next business meeting, which is on the 19th. The final levy cannot be more than the preliminary levy unless there was a successful bond or operating referendum election. So here's kind of a summary so far of our proposed levy and the process. September 8th, the Department of Education came out with the initial document with all the formulas. On the 19th, you as a school board approved a maximum levy that provides us with a little bit more flexibility rather than approving an actual dollar amount, which you'll be asked to do on the 19th. And then, as I showed, the proposed property tax statements came out in mid-November. Tonight we're having the public hearing, and then again on the 19th we will have the school board act on the proposed levy. And there are a number of factors involved causing the tax bill to change from year to year, whether it increases or decreases, changes in the value of the property, changes in the total makeup of all the properties in the city of Marshall. If that increases, that's good news from the standpoint that the tax then is spread out amongst more property owners. And then, of course, state funding formulas, local needs, and the operating referendum, etc. So the changes, can happen and do happen from year to year, and everyone's property tax statement can vary, again, based on the different conditions. So, for 2017, the proposed property tax levy will increase by $203,131.28. That reflects a 3.16% increase. I had mentioned earlier about getting some changes here late in the game. We were at 3.18, so actually our tax increase amount was reduced by a little bit. And so we'll move on to highlighting some of the changes, the reason for the change or for the increase. Go back again to the $724 per pupil unit and the $300 for a board-approved levy. And we already had something in place to like $270, and then you approved the additional $30 to get us to the $300. And then we have opted into the local optional revenue of an additional $424. And there are 221 school districts that have voter referendum authority in excess of the $724. But there are quite a number of districts that are just at that $724. One of the major changes, and I've talked about this before, is the long-term facilities maintenance revenue. It's a great program. The legislature passed, I think it was the 2015 legislature that passed that, and it's going to be certainly an aid for us. We started out with this year, this is the first year of the long-term facilities maintenance revenue, at $193 per pupil unit. In 2017-2018 fiscal year, that goes up to $292, and in the following year it goes up again. And so one of the reasons for a change or an increase in the levy is because of the long-term facilities maintenance revenue moving from that $193 to $292. And as I had mentioned in previous presentations and discussions, it replaces health and safety, deferred maintenance, and the alternative facilities revenue programs that had been in place, and it's all lumped into one. And again, it's a good thing. And it's equalized. It's a combination of both levy and state aid. And there you can see a list of the things that you can use this long-term facilities maintenance revenue for. You can't buy, in essence, new equipment, but you can certainly repair equipment that you might have or repair your facilities, whether it's parking lots or roofs or whatever. And so, again, we're going to utilize that to its full extent, and it increases to the point that I think in the third year we're going to be receiving a little bit more than $1 million worth of long-term facilities maintenance revenue. And that compares very favorably with what we used to receive with all the combination of these different programs, which was maybe in the area of $300,000. So that's a significant increase. And some of the reasons for the increase in our levy, local optional levy, and that's because of more students. Debt service, there's one of those items that we don't really necessarily have control over. They do the Minnesota Department of Education does an adjustment on an annualized basis as depending on your fund balance in the debt service fund. And so we're getting a reduction of $50,000 in that area. And I'd mentioned earlier that the long-term facilities maintenance revenue was one of the main reasons why we're having an increase. We're projecting a change of $200,000+ because, again, the change in what we're receiving per pupil unit from 16-17 moving to 17-18. Operating capital, this is one where the levy ratio was reduced from 50% to 35%. So that's the reason for that rather significant reduction. We're receiving more aid and less local levy. The judgment levy, that's $137,000. It's a one-time thing, and that's reimbursement for costs of a settlement that took place here a year and a half or so ago. So that will be a help, and it's after the fact, but in essence it's a reimbursement. Any question on that? And referendum equity levies, that is increasing $118,000 plus, comparing it the 16-17 with the 17-18. Again, more adjusted pupil units drives that increase. And the aid levy calculation is weighted this year more in the direction of increased levy and less aid. And those are, again, this is an example of what the state legislature does over time on an annualized basis, determining, how much equalization aid are school districts going to get. Are they going to get more? Are they going to reduce that? Again, depending on what the financial condition of the state of Minnesota is. And as I said before, it varies. Any individual property can vary, again, based on what their particular situation is. Check your truth in taxation statement to see what those tax impacts are, not just for the school district, but for the city and the county. And here's how the funds, the main three areas, how the funds are spent that we receive from the levy. General fund, you can see all those programs, areas that we spend our general fund levy dollars on. Lease levy. Providing funds for facilities maintenance and instructional equipment. Health and safety items, achievement and integration, QComp. In community service, it's ECFE, school readiness, and And it is based at least on to a certain part on the adult population in the Marshall School District. And then the debt service levy is to pay our annual debt retirement, the interest and principal, and then we have the OPEB in place, and that's funding that we need to pay back also. So those are the three main funds that are impacted by the levy process. And here are the numbers for each of those three funds. And our total amount, again, $6,633,050.70. Comparison on those three funds, what the pay or 15 pay 16 amounts were in the total amount, and what the 16-17 proposed are and the total amount, and whether there's an increase or a decrease. As you can see in two of the categories, we have decreases, debt service and community service, and then we have 264,000 or almost 8% increase in the general fund levy. In bottom line is overall a 3.16% increase. And this is a breakdown, just taking a look from a different angle, looking at voter-approved levies as compared to all the other school levies. Voter-approved levies, you'll see didn't increase very much, about $32,000, $31,000, or proposed anyway. The other school levies went up, considerably more. And then again, the voter-approved levies would be for operating referendums and bond issues. There are the numbers again. And just a little bit of history in regards to our tax levy. Over the past 3 or 4 years, we have seen increases. But if we look at it, and there will be a slide coming up, basically since 2010, our tax levy has remained pretty much stable. It's been almost flatlined. So there hasn't been a whole lot of change. Even though you'll see those percent changes, over the years, there's only 1 year that there was really a significant amount of change, and that was 03 pay 04, and 111% increase. That was because of the passage of the bond referendum to build the high school and to remodel this building. Market value can change. On my particular statement, the market value did not change from last year to this year. Those discussions take place with the local board of review and the county board of equalization. We're not here to discuss that tonight, but that is certainly a factor as far as market value changing, whether it's ag land or a home or a commercial property. Those changes certainly do occur, and they have a direct impact on what you might be paying as far as property taxes, whether it's for the school district or the city or county. And the only thing I'm going to point out on this slide is that this is a slide I've had in previous years, tax rate pay 2012. And I'm using the same slide because the tax rates have not changed. So that lists all the different types of property and what the tax rates are. And here's just an example on a $200,000 property in the three main different categories, residential homestead, commercial industrial, and agricultural homestead. Property value all the same, but look at the tax rate, different. And then what the net tax capacity is certainly different. All that gets added up. Eventually you have adjusted net tax capacity, and that's how the taxes are spread. Again, based on what the tax rates are for the different individual types of property. This chart just shows that the general fund amount is the greatest amount of tax levy spending for our school district. Debt service is fairly close behind, paying off our principal and interest on our debt, and then community service at 3%. This is a slide that comes from schoolfinances.com, and I'm just going to point out one thing on this slide, that here's a little bit of history on a $160,000 property from 2012 to pay 2017. And you'll see that ag land is at $487 proposed for 2017. Commercial industrial is at $916, again because of the different tax rates, and then residential at $684. And just interesting here for residential, $675 was the amount in 2016. $684 is the amount for school district purposes, in essence being proposed for 2017. Not a huge increase. And then over here is just, again, showing what's happened over the years from pay 2012 through pay 2017, and then the makeup of whether it's community education or debt service or general fund. Any questions on that slide? I was talking about earlier that we basically have been pretty flat line since 2010. There really hasn't been a whole lot of change. Yeah, there was a decrease here, and then there's been the slight increases over the last 3 years. Nothing like what we had here that was quite significant, a change. This slide shows how we compare with 3 other school districts. Regional centers, I would categorize them at New Ulm, Worthington, and Wilmer. Again, comparing $160,000 market value home. Here's Marshall at $684, New Ulm at $798, Worthington a little bit less, $673, Wilmer about the same, $680. And again, I think a lot of their experience, if you look at those 4 lines, basically has been fairly flat over quite a number of years. And it's a nice tool that comes from schoolfinances.com, and I can put in any school district in the state of Minnesota, and again, just to compare, see what other property owners are paying in their particular school district. State property tax refunds. When we start talking about refunds, we're getting near the end of this presentation. And there are 2 tax refund programs and a deferral program available. They may reduce the tax burden, but only if you take time to complete and send in the forms. I think that would be a given, but yes, you do need to file. And certainly encourage people to consult their tax professional or visit the Minnesota Department of Revenue website at www.taxes.state.mn.us. One of those is the circuit breaker refund. This basically just explains what the qualifications are to get the circuit breaker refund. The next is the special property tax refund. And you'd fill out state tax form M-1PR. And down below again is the phone number for the Minnesota Department of Revenue, and they'd be happy to provide any answers that you might have to, or that they will have to your questions. And then we talked about the one deferral. This is the senior citizen property tax deferral. Your taxes are deferred, they're not forgiven. You still have to pay them, but you can defer them to another year. Finally, on that ding,
Means you're done.
I guess we're done. The motion that you will be asked to approve on the 19th, be it resolved that the school board of the Independent School District 413, that the amount levied will be in 2016 for 2017 is set at $633,050.70. And again, that's just the summary by fund that makes up that or encompasses that total amount of $6,633,000. So the board will accept any public comments and questions on the levy tonight, and then if we need to have, we'll conduct a subsequent hearing on the 19th. So, public comments and questions in regards to the tax levy for Marshall Public Schools. Okay. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your diligence in listening this evening. This is, and I'm sure the student school board members learned a lot through this evening, correct? Just say yes, okay? Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bruce.
Thanks, Bruce.
Board forum, anybody in the board have anything they'd like to enlighten us?
I visited with Darcy Love about Parkside site, and she was very complimentary. She talked a little bit about their PBIS programs, and kind of talked about a wish list, and I think I talked to you guys a little bit about that. Overall, she's happy with the school. You know, we'd love to get the trailer out of there, obviously, but so she was very, very complimentary.
Anybody else? This is be our second reading of policies 613, 906, 710, 624, 203, and 721. Did anybody have any new questions on those? Move on to our action item. We have approval of the 2015 Achievement and Integration Progress Report. Motion to approve. Any questions?
Just a couple quick comments on this. Each year, you're required to approve this report. We do have a 3-year plan as part of the Southwest Collaborative, which we receive, I want to say this past year was about $325,000 through Achievement and Integration funding. With that, we do several different things, but primarily we hire staff to work with students in terms of the achievement aspect of the plan. The integration part of it is our ACT Prep Day that we have each year with our partnering districts out at SMSU. That'll be taking place, I believe, in March, if I'm not mistaken, and has for the past few years. I did put a cover page with the actual report that we need to submit. So the report that will be submitted to the Department of Education is actually pages 2 through 8 of the attachment. And then the cover page, just there's areas in the report that they limit us to so many characters being visible. So I tried to pull those out of the report and put them in the cover page for you. But it's basically, just like it says, a progress report relative to our district in terms of our achievement and integration goals. And I certainly could answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? Very good. Please vote. It is approved. Anything else, board, for the good? Anything else? Meeting's over. Thank you.